Welcome to another audit walkthrough video from SuperfastCPA. I'm Logan, and in today's video, we're going to be going over Audit Area 4. This is Section B1. This is a remembering and understanding topic. Identify the factors that a practitioner should consider when issuing an assertion-based examination, direct examination, or review report. And we're going to be doing that the SuperfastCPA way, which is diving straight into the questions to learn the material. Now, if you don't know much about our strategies, make sure you go to SuperfastCPA.com and sign up for our free 1-hour webinar training. Again, it is free, it is only 1 hour long, and we will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam so you don't waste months or even years of your time failing exams. So make sure you check that out, and after you watch that, you're going to want to learn more, so make sure you also check out becoming a Superfast CPA Pro member. Pro members get access to the full 10-question versions of these videos. So in today's video, we're only going to be going over 5 questions, but Superfast CPA Pro members, again, will get access to the full 10-question version of the video so that they can get a little bit more help and a little bit more understanding. So if you like this and you like our other videos, check out becoming a Pro member. Now with all that, let's dive straight into the questions. All right, here we are at question 1, and let's just dive straight in. Which of the following best describes an attestation engagement under the Statements on Standards for Attestation Engagements, and that's SSAE. So let's go through the options. Option A, an engagement in which a CPA performs procedures selected by the client to report factual findings without expressing an opinion or conclusion. Option B, an engagement in which a CPA expresses an opinion on whether historical financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with a financial reporting framework. Option C, an engagement in which a CPA issues an examination, review, or agreed upon procedures report on subject matter or an assertion about subject matter made by another party. Or option D, an engagement in which a CPA assists in preparing financial statements without providing any assurance. So we've gone over the different options, and if you have any idea what an attestation engagement is that falls under SSAE, then you might know the answer to this. If not though, that's okay. We're going to dive into the explanation to kind of start learning about this. Okay, here we are at the answer C, an engagement in which a CPA issues an examination, review, or agreed upon procedures report on subject matter or an assertion about subject matter made by another party. So essentially, we are going over, based on the blueprint, you might not have really known what we were talking about, but we are talking essentially about attestation engagements. That's what all those different things we mentioned at the beginning fall under. So let's go through the explanation. Attestation engagements governed by SSAE involve a CPA providing assurance on subject matter or an assertion about the subject matter that is the responsibility of another party, typically management. These engagements include examinations, and that's positive assurance, reviews with limited assurance, and agreed upon procedures that have no assurance. They are broader in scope than audits, as they are not limited to historical financial statements and may apply to things like financial forecasts, internal controls, or compliance matters. Attestation standards differ from audit standards in that they do not require financial statements and allow for a variety of subject matter, such as the square footage of a warehouse or investment performance data. So essentially, again, what we're going over in this video is attestation engagements, and these are the kinds of engagements that fall under SSAE, or the Statements on Standards for Attestation Engagements. So again, it's things like examinations, reviews, or agreed upon procedures, or things like that. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about in this video. They fall under SSAE. Now with that, let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 2. In which of the following situations would a CPA most appropriately apply the Statements on Standards for Attestation Engagements? Again, that's SSAE. So let's go through the options. Option A, compiling a non-issuer's historical financial statements for external users. Option B, performing an agreed upon procedures engagement to report on an entity's compliance with contractual terms. Option C, reviewing a non-public company's financial statements to provide limited assurance. Or option D, assisting management in preparing a budget for internal use only. So based on what we learned in the previous question, you might kind of have an idea of what situations would now have SSAE apply to them. So if you want to give this a guess or think about it, pause the video. If not though, let's go ahead and take a look at the answer together. All right, here we are at the answer B, performing an agreed upon procedures engagement to report on an entity's compliance with contractual terms. So that would be something that would fall under SSAE. So let's go through the explanation. SSAE applies to attestation engagements in which a CPA is engaged to issue a report on subject matter or an assertion about subject matter that is the responsibility of another party. This includes examinations, reviews, and agreed upon procedures engagements, such as reporting on compliance, MD&A, or forecasts. In contrast, compilations and reviews of historical financial statements for non-issuers are governed by SARS or SSARS, not SSAE. Additionally, consulting type services like helping management prepare a budget are outside the scope of attestation standards altogether. SSAE does not apply to advocacy services, tax services, or financial statement audits. So essentially what we learned in this is we learned a little bit more about the things that SSAE does apply to or that it doesn't apply to. It does not apply to advocacy, tax services. It also doesn't apply to things that fall under SARS, like reviews of historical financial statements or compilations or things like that. So really, again, it just applies to attestation engagements where, the CPA is engaged to report on subject matter or an assertion on subject matter that is the responsibility of another party. But again, this is different than an audit. They're just doing something like an examination or a review or agreed upon procedures, and we'll learn a little bit more about agreed upon procedures in future videos. But essentially, we learned a little bit more about what falls under SSAE in this question. Now let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 3. Which of the following types of assurance is most likely provided in a review engagement under the SSAE framework? So we talked a little bit about assurance in the first question. Now let's go through these options and we'll start learning about it in this question a little bit more. Option A, negative assurance that nothing came to the CPA's attention indicating a material misstatement. Option B, positive assurance that the subject matter is free of material misstatement. Option C, no assurance, only a summary of procedures performed. Or option D, absolute assurance that the subject matter is accurate in all respects. So again, what is the following type of assurance that they most likely provide in a review engagement? So let's go ahead and go to the answer to kind of start learning about this. All right, here we are at the answer. A, negative assurance that nothing came to the CPA's attention indicating a material misstatement. Okay, so let's go through the explanation. Under SSAE, a review engagement provides limited assurance, which is expressed in the form of negative assurance. This means the CPA states that nothing came to their attention that causes them to believe the subject matter is materially misstated. In contrast, an examination engagement provides positive assurance, similar to an audit, while agreed upon procedures engagements provide no assurance, only findings. All three fall under SSAE when the practitioner reports on subject matter or assertions made by another party, such as MD&A, prospective financials, or internal control compliance. So essentially, again, we talked about this a little bit in question 1, but you might not have really known what positive assurance, negative assurance means. Again, positive assurance is kind of similar to what you provide in an audit, whereas for a review engagement, you're only providing limited assurance. You're only mainly doing it through negative assurance, where you look through it and you're going to say that nothing came to your attention, but you're not going to do anything other than that. And then agreed upon procedures doesn't really provide any assurance. You just kind of tell them what you see, but you're not providing any assurance at all. So again, we kind of learned a little bit more about the different kinds of assurance that relate to the kinds of engagements that fall under SSAE. Now let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 4. Which of the following is a requirement for a CPA to perform an attestation engagement under SSAE? So let's go through the options. Option A, the CPA must have prepared the subject matter being attested to. Option B, the CPA must be independent of the responsible party. Option C, the CPA must use financial statement audit procedures. Or option D, the CPA must perform advocacy on behalf of the client. So again, what is a requirement for an attestation engagement under SSAE? Think about what we've learned so far, and I think you could kind of reason your way through this. And when you're ready, come back and we'll look at the answer together. All right, here we are. The answer is B. The CPA must be independent of the responsible party. So let's go into the explanation. A key requirement for all SSAE attestation engagements is that the practitioner must be independent of the responsible party. This independence ensures the credibility of the assurance provided. Attestation engagements are not consulting services. The CPA must not advocate for the client, that was option D, and they are not allowed to both prepare and attest to the same subject matter, and that would have been option A, as that would impair independence. Additionally, attestation engagements follow SSAE standards, not gas audit procedures, and that was option C. SSAE engagements must maintain objectivity and avoid roles that would compromise the CPA's impartiality. And again, it kind of makes sense. You pretty much have to be independent in most cases when it comes to auditing. There might be a few small cases, but usually you have to be independent of whoever you're auditing or whoever you're providing the service for. So we learned a little bit more there. Now let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 5, and something I haven't really talked about very much in this video, but I like to talk about it whenever it's an option, is a good strategy for test day is to read the last question or the last sentence of the question first. So you see here I bolded it. This is a very good habit to be in, to kind of go straight to the bottom and read the last sentence, because very frequently that will give you context for what the question is actually about, for what you're actually supposed to be looking for throughout the question. So you read that and then you go through the rest of it with the context already in mind, and that will help you go faster on test day. So let's do it here. Which assertion is the CPA primarily evaluating in this procedure? So again, imagine you were on test day and you immediately know you're dealing with assertions. So let's go to the top. When performing a review of management discussion and analysis, or MD&A, under SSAE, the CPA compares key operating metrics such as unit sales, square footage, employee hour data to the underlying accounting records to verify that the narrative is drawn from reliable sources. So again, which assertion is the CPA primarily evaluating in this procedure? So is it A, completeness, B, presentation and disclosure, C, occurrence, or D, consistency? So think about this. We've talked about these different assertions in other videos. So if you've watched those, or if you already know this from your review course, I think you should pause the video and kind of think about this. Or even if you don't really know very much about this, think about what these words mean, and then think about what the question is talking about, what the question is asking about. And when you're ready, come back, we'll look at the answer together. All right, here we are. The answer is D, consistency. That is the answer in this case. So let's kind of walk through this. In an MD&A review, and by the way, again, this is an attestation engagement, it's a review, consistency addresses whether non-financial data and narrative disclosures are accurately derived from and consistent with the underlying records or audited financial statements. By tracing operating metrics back to source data, the CPA is testing this consistency assertion, ensuring that management's discussion reflects reliable information and that figures agree with the records. The other assertions, that would be completeness, occurrence, presentation, or disclosure, are relevant but not the focus of this particular work step, which again is them reviewing this MD&A to kind of compare the key metrics to the underlying accounting records. So we kind of see how the assertions kind of tie into a lot of things in the audit exam. But that was question 5 for learning about attestation engagements. Now, before we do anything else, let's do one more part of the SuperFast CPA process called pillar topics. Now, the idea behind pillar topics is as you're going through the questions to learn the material, you will notice the things that keep popping up. You've seen 2 or 3 or 4 questions trying to teach you about the different factors and the different things that auditors need to consider when they are doing attestation engagements or whatever the case is. Again, you notice these things throughout the questions as you're going through them. And what you do is you pull out the most important things you learned, the pillar topics, and you write them in your own words. So that as you're doing this each day, as you're going through the questions to learn the material, you will be building your own personal repository of the most important things you learned from the questions in your own words so that you are prepared for test day. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pillar topics for this video. All right, here we are at the pillar topics. Let's just dive straight in. First off, let's talk about the definition and scope of attestation engagements. Again, attestation engagements is kind of the idea behind what we were talking about in the blueprint. Attestation engagements involve a CPA issuing an examination, review, or agreed upon procedures, report on subject matter, or an assertion made by another party. These engagements are broader than audits and may address areas such as forecasts, internal controls, or compliance. Now let's talk about when the SSAE applies versus when you would use other standards. SSAE applies when a CPA is engaged to provide assurance on subject matter other than the historical financial statements. SSAE does not apply to advocacy services, consulting, or engagements governed by GAS or SARS, and we'll talk about SARS in a future video, such as audits or compilations. Now let's talk about the different kinds of reports and assurance levels that fall under SSAE. Under SSAE, an examination provides positive assurance, a review provides negative/limited assurance, and agreed upon procedures provide no assurance. And those typically are the kinds of things, the reports that fall under SSAE. These engagements are performed on assertions or subject matter that CPA did not create. Now let's talk about the practitioner requirements and limitations. A CPA must be independent to form an attestation engagement under SSAE. The practitioner must not prepare the subject matter or act as an advocate, as either would impair objectivity and disqualify the engagement. And then finally, assertions with the MD&A and subject matter examples. In MD&A reviews, the CPA evaluates assertions such as consistency, completeness, occurrence, and presentation and disclosure. These engagements test whether management's narrative aligns with reliable data and is fairly presented under established criteria. And again, those were kind of the key points, the pillar topics that you could have / most likely would have pulled out based on the questions we just barely went over when we're talking about attestation engagements like reviews, examinations, or even agreed upon procedures. And with that, that is the end of the 5-question YouTube video. Remember that SuperFast CPA Pro members get access to the full 10-question version of the video that I'm about to finish recording after this so that they can get a little bit more help and a little bit more understanding. So if you like this and you like our other videos and our other products, make sure you check out becoming a SuperFast CPA Pro member. And the easiest way to do that is actually by going to SuperfastCPA.com and signing up for our free 1-hour webinar training where we will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam. And after you watch that, that will give you a great path to becoming a SuperFast CPA Pro member. So make sure you check out the webinar, then become a SuperFast CPA Pro member. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to like it and leave a comment. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.